Welcome to an introduction to church school governance. I'm Linda Boys, the Governance Officer for the Chester Diocesan Education Team, and today we will be looking at what makes church schools distinctive and the role of governance within them. Firstly, a brief history about how schools were founded, why we have them, and the different types. So from around 1800, most of the schools founded were to provide elementary education for the children of the poor of the parish and were established by church communities. They were underpinned by trust deeds, and these still exist for some of your schools. By 1811, the National Society was formed as an overarching body for all of these little church parish schools. By 1870, the Education Act brought the involvement of the state into education, which founded some of our community schools today. And post-war, in 1944, the Education Act led to a partnership with local education authorities and the development of voluntary aided and voluntary controlled school types for church schools. Finally, by 2010, the Academies Act established the multi-academy trust and academies system that we know today. All church schools should have a few commonalities. They should have church or diocesan appointed governors or trust directors. They should have a vision statement which reflects both their local context and that's theologically rooted. And they will be under two separate inspection regimes: Ofsted, alongside community schools, looking at standards, but also the statutory inspection of Anglican and Methodist schools, which is known as SIAMS, looking at their Christian vision and its impacts and outcomes. And we will cover more details about that later. There are three different types of church school management structure. Voluntary aided maintained schools, which are aided by the local authority. Voluntary controlled maintained schools, where the local authority has slightly greater support and oversight, and academies within multi-academy trusts. The differences you can see listed on the slides outline the responsible entities for employment, admissions, governance appointment, and religious education and curriculum. For maintained schools, the instrument of government sets out their governance structure. Whether voluntary aided or voluntary controlled, the governing board will have a role for the head teacher, a staff representative, at least two parents, one local authority governor, possibly co-opted governors, depending on their structure, an ex officio foundation governor, which is generally the local parish principal ministering officer, and foundation governors. If the school is voluntary aided, then they must be in a majority of two over all other roles. And if the school is voluntary controlled, then there should be at least two, but no more than a quarter of the total of all the roles involved. The governing board may also have associate members. These aren't listed on the instrument and have limited voting rights, but can bring useful expertise to the board. Academy schools will work within a three-tiered structure of governance. The trust articles will define member and director appointments. And so the trust will have members, which will include diocesan appointments, a board of directors or trustees, and the numbers of those and the appointing entities for those will be set out in the articles. And also, for local academies within multi-academy trusts, a local governing body, which will be set out in the trust's scheme delegation. All of these different governance structures, the key objectives are to ensure a clarity of vision and ethos, to provide strategic direction, the opportunity to hold head teachers to account for the performance of school and pupils, and to oversee the financial performance of the school to make sure money is well spent. And if you are a governor in an academy within a multi-academy trust, you will need to check the scheme of delegation or terms of reference to see what responsibilities are allocated at which level between the trustees and the local governing body appropriate for your school or academy. Looking into the areas of coverage for governance in more detail, we would always encourage new governors to look into the available training from local authorities or their trust to help and support them in their journey. Our training is designed to complement that. But the areas that we would generally expect governance to have insight and coverage over would be standards, curriculum, policies, finance, discipline, staffing, appraisals, safeguarding, and supporting the inspection processes the school responds to. But more than this, we are about developing the whole child, and we'll be looking at that in more detail. In summary, the role of governance within a school can be described as a critical friend, someone who brings the balance of challenge and support to the senior leadership team, who's questioning and seeks information, but also makes proposals and endeavours to achieve solutions. Within the monitoring and reviewing aspects of the role, there should be elements of self-evaluation to identify within the board what is working and what isn't, and also within the school what is working and what isn't. Governors should seek clear reporting of information from the head and senior leadership team, and there should be clear lines of accountability to support their inquiry and review. And most importantly, whatever decisions are made, there should be a clear line of impact for the pupils within the setting. We'll go on to look at how a theologically rooted vision can support and focus this to enable governors to take on that strategic rather than operational role. However, before we move on, I'd just like to signpost some very useful resources from the Department for Education. Governance guides for academies and maintained schools were revised in 2024 and are available on the links shown through the DfE government website. These are the definitive go-to guides for school governance, whether in church, school or community settings, and help to establish all the information you may need around regulations and other advisory aspects. Most of the information we've looked at so far would be relevant for both community schools and church schools. We will now look at aspects that are unique and distinctive to church school settings. If your school is a maintained school, then within its instrument of government, the following statements should be included. If you take a look at the highlighted part, it emphasises the school's aim to serve its community by providing education of the highest quality within the context of Christian belief and practice. This being the modern version of the original intention of many parishes to provide education for the poor of the parish. This underpins the ethos of Anglican Church School Foundations in seeking to provide education for all within their community. Similar statements can be found within the articles of multi-academy trust documents in support of the public benefit of education and accordance with the principles and practices and tenets of the Church of England to guide the ethos of church school academies. When we consider church school distinctiveness, alongside all the elements that church schools may share, there will always be elements of uniqueness. Take a moment to consider what makes your school or academy unique. Consider its context, location, the community it may serve, the causes it supports, as well as how it expresses its Christian distinctive ethos. A significant foundation to any church school's vision and ethos should be its relationship with the Church of England and the National Society's vision for education. Their vision statement is deeply Christian, serving the common good. I'll look into that in a little more detail. The National Society's vision for education both sets the aspiration for Anglican church schools and also underpins the SIAM's inspection framework. It expands into 4 key areas of what it expects education within a church school or academy to aspire to. Education for knowledge and wisdom, hope and aspiration, dignity and respect, and community and living well together. The SIAM's inspections are carried out every 5 years, based around a framework that was revised in September 2023. As well as including the aspects from the previous slide, new framework moved from a one-word outcome to a narrative statement so that schools' own unique paths and journeys of development can be noted and recognised. A school going through the inspection process will receive a narrative which will include one of two judgment statements. Either the inspection findings will indicate that the school is living up to its foundation as a church school and is enabling pupils and adults to flourish. This means the inspectors will have looked for evidence of an effective theologically rooted Christian vision throughout the inspection. This statement will be made in cases where schools have a vision that meets those criteria and where there's enough evidence for the following 6 or 7 inspection questions to state that the resulting practice is enabling pupils and adults to flourish. And there needs to be enough evidence for that inspector to answer all of those 6 or 7 questions positively for this judgment to be allocated. The school will also receive feedback on areas for long-term development as part of its narrative because, as previously stated, every school is on its own development journey. However, if the inspector is unable to answer each of the inspection questions positively, they may select the second judgment statement and support this with reasons outlined accordingly to explain their judgment. This is by no means a failed inspection because the successes of the school will also be highlighted. However, there will be some areas of immediate concern that need to be addressed and supported accordingly. A fundamental part of your school's church school distinctiveness is its vision. A theologically rooted vision should inform your school's strategy and objectives. It's one of the reasons why it's a key focus in the SIAMS framework. The vision should convey who are we and why we are here. Effectively, why and how do we love and serve all in our context, pupils, students, and adults? And what is our purpose for being in that community? Reflect on the previous slide regarding your context and its uniqueness, and think about whether your school or academy's vision matches up to that. Because as governors, you are also charged with considering how did your school community get to where it is and set its vision? How do you monitor the impact and continuing relevance of that vision? And how can you judge if that vision is evolving or changing based on those contextual factors? You may not necessarily want or need to change your school's vision, but it may inform you in changing your strategy or policy or objectives accordingly. Associated values spring from your vision and set the question for how then do we live? How do your associated values enable your school to live out the vision? If your values don't help you as a community live out your vision, it may be wise to reconsider them to ensure they truly describe who you are as a school. Your vision should also be theologically rooted. Theology is defined as the study in the nature of God and religious belief. Therefore, theological means that which is related to the nature of God. Christian theology consists of teachings of the Bible, as well as the teachings and traditions of church. Checking that your vision is theologically rooted is more than just ensuring that there is a Bible verse linked to it in some way. It needs to have depth of meaning, be comprehensive with that verse, and conveyed through your values. We can support and help if you wish to look at revisioning at any point in your governing board's journey, and there's more information available as part of our SIAMS inspection course for governors as well. Take a moment and consider, what is your school's vision and where is it? That may be physically on the wall of the reception as you come in, or the school's website. But it also may be used as a point of reflection in meetings, or as a guidance when making decisions. For your school and its context, think about where you may have seen it or used it as part of your governance role. Some checkpoints for you to consider are whether your vision clearly reflects the context of your school. If the theology is clear and sits behind that vision and makes it distinctive. That those within the community are aware of the vision and where it can be shown. And in the wider community as well. You could learn about the history of how it came about and the choices that were made to inform its construction, or check that it's regularly reviewed or reviewed after changes in your local context. And if there are any aspects of your school's daily life that are overtly linked to your vision. School leadership needs to be committed to the distinctive Christian vision of the school, and governors can support this through the appointment of effective church school leaders able to provide academic and spiritual challenge. Governors can also ensure distinctive Christian vision for the school and reflect this through policy documents, the school's development plan, their self-evaluation, and the actions they take. Church schools are expected to engage in an act of meaningful Christian worship every day. And a clear worship policy that's monitored and evaluated will aid and support this. Governance decisions around budgets to provide resources and training are also key. And governors can attend and involve themselves in worship to support the school. Governors can provide a role model for relationships with staff, children, parents, and each other, built on respect and love through Christian ethos. Governors can also support these relationship types through behaviour policy and by reflecting their priorities. A good relationship with the local parish community can be strengthened through the ex officio foundation governor and other foundation governors through shared information, events and activities. And ensuring adequate support for religious education and time on the curriculum can be included in policy and decision making at board level. Thank you for taking our introduction course today. If you have any questions, we also offer a drop-in session. Please check our events page for when the next session is scheduled, or you can contact me, Linda Boys, the Chester team, if you have any specific questions. Thank you.